I mean, you guys are unfortunately kind of familiar with injury updates this season, but I imagine yesterday's was probably pretty tough. Just what's the reaction been from you guys, the players, the coaches, to losing Sid and Ari?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, just brokenhearted for them. They're two really good people that you hate to see this happen to. They've been an integral part of what we've been doing, and so hate it for them. So I think now it's about playing to honor them, right, and playing for them. I think I said it early when C was out the very first time. Sometimes it can be a blessing in disguise because everybody else finds themselves, right, and no one is afraid to make the big play. Offensively or defensively. And so I think it's just, we got a really good group that's unselfish, that want to win, that play well together and for each other. And when one person doesn't have it, somebody else does. And I think it makes this really, really difficult to scout when that happens.
Stephanie White is facing major backlash after fans pointed out what they see as a clear double standard in how she treats Caitlin Clark compared to the rest of the Indiana Fever squad. Many are now calling for her removal, claiming her approach is damaging the team. Before the Fever's recent game against the Chicago Sky, White spoke to the media and gave an emotional, heartfelt statement about Ari McDonald and Sydney Carlson's season-ending injuries. But fans quickly noticed that her comments were far warmer and more sympathetic than the way she addressed Caitlin Clark's injury earlier this season, which came across as distant and matter-of-fact. The stark difference in tone has sparked outrage online, with supporters accusing White of showing blatant favoritism and disrespect toward Clark. The reaction has been so strong that some are urging the team to fire her immediately to prevent further tension.
She's really happy Caitlin Clark's not playing. I gotta believe that at this point. How could you ever say it's a blessing in disguise to lose your best player? So they all can get confidence in doing what exactly? Do you think Sophie Cunningham without Caitlin Clark is going to be better than Sophie Cunningham with Caitlin Clark? Hell no. Sophie Cunningham is going to see so many open looks playing next to Caitlin Clark. Aaliyah Boston's game has clearly regressed without Caitlin Clark. When Caitlin doesn't play, Leah Boston doesn't typically play all that great. Lexi Hall has become virtually invisible without Caitlin Clark. I think we all know by now that Lexi Hall doesn't function unless Caitlin Clark plays. And you're sitting here saying that she is a blessing in disguise, that she's injured.
Critics have pointed out that Coach White once referred to Caitlin Clark's injury as a blessing in disguise, yet became visibly emotional when discussing the season-ending injuries of Ari McDonald and Sydney Carlson. To many observers, this contrast suggests a deep bias against one of the WNBA's most high-profile stars. The shift in tone, from a detached reaction to Clark's situation to an openly sympathetic response toward other players, has fueled claims of favoritism and disrespect. Fans argue that without Clark, the franchise might not have regained its recent surge in relevance, making the perceived lack of support even more glaring. This growing frustration has led to calls for the Fever's leadership to reconsider White's position before further damage is done.
That doesn't even make sense. Blessing in disguise that Michael Jordan ain't played for freaking 15 games. Blessing in disguise that LeBron James ain't. That's ridiculous. Because the second she gets back, they're going to go back into their actual role of what they're supposed to do. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise for Stephanie White because she doesn't really care for Caitlin Clark and doesn't really want to have to deal with running Caitlin Clark offense over motion, where Caitlin Clark isn't the focal point of the offense.
During a pre-game media briefing, White addressed the injuries to Ari McDonald and Sydney Carlson, expressing deep sadness over their situations. She described both as really good people who play a vital role in the team's dynamic, speaking with clear emotion as she emphasized her dislike for seeing them sidelined. White highlighted not only their contributions on the court, but also their presence in the locker room, noting that their personalities and leadership would be sorely missed for the rest of the season. That compassionate and heartfelt response stood in sharp contrast to how she spoke earlier in the year about Caitlin Clark's groin injury, which forced Clark to miss several games. At the time, White commented that while losing Clark wasn't ideal, it could be a blessing in disguise, explaining that it gave other players a chance to step up on both offense and defense. Rather than focusing on concern for Clark's well-being, she immediately shifted to the potential benefits of her absence, a tone many fans saw as dismissive toward the player widely credited with reviving the franchise's popularity.
But when your team suddenly rips off a 5-game winning streak without a superstar and the coach start using phrases like blessing in disguise, you have to start reading between the lines. It's like being the star employee who goes on medical leave only to come back and find your team hit all their targets without you, and your duties have been reassigned and everyone seems just a little too happy. Do you build the company around the brilliant, rule-breaking founder? Or do you force that founder to conform to the safe, predictable corporate structure? Coach Stephanie White is known for a value in a team-first system where the ball moves and everyone contributes. Then you have Caitlin Clark. She doesn't just fit into a system, she is the system. Her talent is so massive, it fundamentally changes how the game is played.
When Clark was sidelined, White's response was measured and matter-of-fact, framing the situation as an opportunity for the rest of the roster rather than acknowledging the significant setback it posed for the team. This reaction became even more questionable when considering Clark's value compared to McDonald and Carlson. Clark, a two-time All-Star and the driving force behind a surge in WNBA attention and revenue, has a far greater impact on the Fever's success than the two role players combined. Yet, despite Clark's importance, White appeared more outwardly moved by the injuries to the backups than by the absence of the team's cornerstone player. For many, this felt less like a coaching misstep and more like a deliberate slight toward the athlete who has done the most to elevate the franchise. Critics argue this isn't an isolated issue. They point to the start of the season, when White altered the offensive scheme that had brought success during Clark's rookie year. Instead of building on the fast-paced, ball movement-heavy system that showcased Clark's strengths and benefited the entire roster, White introduced a slower, more methodical style. The result, according to detractors, has been a diminished role for Clark and a noticeable decline in the team's overall performance.
Is Stephanie White a good coach? No, she not. Stephanie Jigsaw White, because I'm mad. Look. She is incompetent as a coach. She is unintelligent. She doesn't develop players. There's a reason why those women, when she was coaching in college, had a little 2 years coaching in college with that horrible record. Those women was transferring and leaving that school and leaving her dry as they should. She's a cancer. She's just a cancer in the locker room, just in the workplace. Like, y'all can't tell me that she not sabotaging the team on purpose. You can't tell me, bro.
White's roster moves have also raised eyebrows. Bringing in players such as Natasha Howard, whose skill set didn't align with the up-tempo, ball movement style that had helped Clark and the team's core thrive, signaled a shift away from what was working. Instead of tailoring the system to maximize Clark's strengths, White appeared to expect Clark to adapt to fit around supporting players. For many fans, the blessing in disguise remark about Clark's injury offered a glimpse into the coach's true mindset. They believe White resents the spotlight and scrutiny that come with coaching the league's most high-profile player, preferring instead to work with athletes who won't overshadow her or challenge her tactical choices. Critics argue that White's approach reflects a desire to be the central figure rather than embracing the role of building the most effective system around one of the most gifted players in women's basketball.
Look, Stephanie White, she have her little favorites. Coach your team. Are you trying to keep your coaching job long term, or you want to just look cool? Because right now, everything's starting to make sense to me at the end of the day. The more I watch these games and these rotations, it lets me know that she's doing this on purpose. Whoever giving her orders at top, I just need somebody to come in and just these little relationships with the presidents of the organization, whatever the case may be, the ticket holders, like they all in cahoots with each other, bro. And I don't like.
Some critics have gone so far as to suggest that White seems more comfortable, even relieved, during stretches when Clark is sidelined, as it allows her to run the style of play she prefers without having to tailor it around a once-in-a-generation talent. The backlash to her apparent double standard has been swift and intense on social media, side-by-side clips comparing her heartfelt reaction to the injuries of role players with her more detached comments about Clark's absence have gone viral. One widely shared post highlighted just how different her tone was, sparking waves of replies from fans calling for accountability from both the coaching staff and the front office. Many Fever supporters are frustrated by what they see as misplaced priorities, giving more public concern to bench players than to the superstar who revitalized the franchise's relevance. The timing couldn't be worse for White. These remarks surfaced amid growing doubts about her coaching decisions, with late-game collapses, squandered leads, and questionable rotations already drawing criticism. Now, fans believe they have clear evidence that she may lack the mindset or willingness to effectively coach a player of Clark's caliber.
I'm so tired of Stephanie White, man. Y'all wanted this woman so badly, bruh. She makes dumb decisions, man. Like, what kind of no-brainer would it be to play Chloe Bibby, one of your players that's been hot shooting, versus a team that was firing on all cylinders, bro? And you could have put her out there to match that, man, because she has a jumper. Stephanie White doesn't make any sense, man. Goofy as hell. Just stupid. Like, I don't understand what she thinks, man. I'm gonna play my player that's come out shooting hot for only 2 minutes for the game. No sense, man.
Stephanie White's recent public comments about Caitlin Clark's injury have sparked outrage among Fever fans and the broader WNBA community, revealing a disturbing double standard and raising serious questions about her suitability as head coach. White's apparent preference for role players over the franchise's brightest star has ignited a fan revolt and exposed deep flaws in the organization's approach to building around one of women's basketball's most transcendent talents. White's decision to bring in players like Natasha Howard, whose style clashes with the one that made Clark and the core group successful, suggests a lack of strategic vision. Even more troubling is White's insistence that Clark, rather than the role players, should adjust to fit the system. This attitude reveals a troubling ego that seems more focused on controlling the narrative and spotlight than on leveraging Clark's unique abilities. When White described Clark's injury as a blessing in disguise, it stripped away any pretense of concern and exposed her true feelings, that coaching the league's biggest star is more a burden than a privilege. Fans quickly recognized the underlying bias and reacted with justified fury. Social media exploded with side-by-side comparisons of White's emotional responses to injuries of role players versus her dismissive attitude toward Clark's health. One viral post highlighted the stark contrast between her heartfelt tributes to injured bench players and her clinical, almost indifferent remarks when discussing Clark's absence. Fever supporters are rightfully upset that their coach seems to value role players over the superstar who single-handedly brought the team out of basketball obscurity. This controversy couldn't have come at a worse time. The Fever have struggled all season with late-game execution, blown leads, and puzzling rotation decisions. Now, White's comments provide tangible evidence that her coaching philosophy is not just questionable but fundamentally incompatible with nurturing a player of Clark's caliber. You simply can't build a championship contender when your coach openly celebrates the absence of your franchise player. That's not just poor leadership. It borders on malpractice. What makes White's remarks even more insulting is that Clark has been nothing but professional throughout her career. She hasn't complained about her usage, nor has she publicly criticized the coaching staff, despite being put in challenging situations due to flawed game plans and roster construction. Clark deserves a coach who not only recognizes, but celebrates her extraordinary talents by designing systems that maximize her impact. Instead, White's comments treat Clark's injury as a convenient opportunity to impose her preferred style of play, effectively sidelining the player who makes the team relevant. The inconsistency in White's messaging is glaring. When key role players like McDonald and Carlson got hurt, White spoke about honoring their legacy and carrying forward their work, signaling respect and an acknowledgement of their importance. But when Clark was injured, the narrative shifted to a message about teammates finding themselves and stepping up, implying Clark's presence might somehow limit their growth. This backwards logic not only underestimates Clark's value but also undermines the foundation of building a winning culture around elite talent. The financial consequences of this bias are equally severe. Clark is a revenue powerhouse. Her popularity drives ticket sales, merchandise, TV ratings, and sponsorship deals that keep the Fever and the WNBA financially viable. White's disregard for Clark's central role shows a worrying disconnect from the business side of professional sports. Within the locker room, this favoritism could breed resentment and division. Players notice how coaches publicly treat their teammates, and Clark must be wondering why the coach shows more concern for role players than for the star who made the franchise relevant. Strategically, White's coaching approach starkly contrasts with the success the Fever had under previous leadership. The offense that Christie built was designed around Clark's strengths, creating spacing and movement that allowed her to thrive both with and without the ball. Under White, the system minimizes Clark's influence, making the offense predictable and easier to defend. This regression in offensive efficiency and overall team performance highlights how much coaching philosophy matters, especially for a generational talent like Clark. White's failure to appreciate Clark's value extends beyond Indiana's borders. Clark's global popularity has turned her into a prominent ambassador for women's basketball worldwide. When international fans see her own coach publicly undermine her, it tarnishes the league's image and could weaken the credibility of women's professional sports at large. Other star players and free agents watch closely how organizations treat their stars, and the Fever's tolerance of White's attitude risks hurting their future recruitment efforts. Fans have made it abundantly clear they won't tolerate continued disrespect toward Clark. Season ticket holders, merchandise buyers, and TV viewers invest their passion and money in the team largely because of her. They expect leadership that reflects her importance and fosters a culture built to maximize her talents. This leaves the Fever front office at a crossroads. They can either continue with a coach whose words and strategies diminish the league's brightest star, or make a bold change to bring in a leader who knows how to build around elite talent, foster team unity without sidelining the centerpiece, and unlock Clark's full potential. The right hire could launch a championship era and redefine women's basketball. The wrong one risks wasting Clark's prime years, alienating fans, and marking a significant failure in professional sports management. Comparisons to legendary coaches highlight how far off the mark White is. Coaches like Phil Jackson with Michael Jordan and Greg Popovich with Tim Duncan built their systems to amplify their star strengths while integrating role players effectively. They never treated injuries to their franchise players as blessings, nor undermined their impact publicly. White's approach is the opposite, treating Clark more as a problem to manage than a weapon to wield. The psychological toll on Clark could be significant. When your own coach suggests the team is better off without you, it can sow doubt and frustration that linger for years, impacting confidence and career trajectory. Clark is still early in her career, and proper coaching is crucial to unlocking her full potential. White's bias threatens to stunt this growth and waste what could be a decade of dominance. The Fever organization has a responsibility to protect Clark's mental health and professional development. Keeping White in place risks violating that duty and could lead to lasting damage. Clark has demonstrated leadership, professionalism, and a team-first attitude that any coach should cherish. Yet, White's contrasting emotional investment, showing far more concern for role players than Clark, is a glaring failure of respect and priorities. The media is already picking up on the dysfunction, fueling national storylines questioning Indiana's environment for Clark's development. These narratives can become self-fulfilling prophecies unless the front office acts decisively.